Hello! This is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition, and this is Midday with Reverend Don. Welcome. Hope you're having a lovely day, and as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments into whatever platform you happen to be watching on, and for most of those platforms, your comments will appear here in my chat room. At present, the chat room is on the screen, and we can all share it together. And I often remark that this is one of my favorite parts of this particular broadcast, that we can have those direct conversations. I was expecting Krys Copeland as my guest today, but something seems to have come up. So apparently we do not have a guest. So the chat room is on the screen, and uh, ordinarily today we'd be talking about what's new from Corellian Publishing. I guess I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about that anyway. And if there's anything else you'd like to talk about, feel free to put it into the chat room. The obvious new thing from Corellian Publishing is Reverend Don's book of, and hello to Magical Mermaid in the chat room. It's good to see you. The new thing, obviously, is Reverend Don's book of stones, metals, and crystals. The final editing is finished. The last touches are being put on it, and then the ebooks will go out, and the hard copies will be ordered this week. Hello to April McLeish in the chat room. It's good to see you, April. Hello to Nikki Dodd in the chat room. And Nikki is joining us from Tulsa. And hello to Renee in the chat room. And it's good to see all of you. But yes, the Book of Stones, Metals, and Crystals is finally ready. So I say the very last bit of typesetting is being done. And if you're waiting for the ebook, you should have it within a day or so, and the hard copy books will be ordered. Now, what we do with hard copy books is we order them from the publisher. They come in, I sign them, we send them out. So you'll have those within a couple of weeks. Sometimes it moves a little faster than others. But the book is finally done and will soon be on its way to you. And I think that you'll enjoy it. It took a lot longer than expected. But it's a very thorough book. It's certainly the most thorough writing I've done on the subject of stones. And it talks about everything from the general meaning of stones and different ideas of ways to use them, to healing with stones, to making amulets and talismans, to making crystal grids and things like crystal surgery. And with the term crystal surgery, one of the things I point out is we use that term for it because of the precision of the energy work involved, not because not because we're opening anything up, but crystal surgery is very precise work with crystals for crystal healing. We talk about all of that in the book. It's really quite a thorough book. It talks at some length about chakras and meridians and how you work with these with crystals and stones. And I think people will be quite happy with it. And April says, speaking of crystals, I've been thinking lately regarding the heavy mining of our Mother Earth. Should we be more mindful of where our crystals are coming from and how they're being mined? And hello to Nicholas in the chat room. And actually, we talk about that in the book, too, to some extent. And I think that yes, there is some truth in that. And I think in some ways, I'm not entirely sure how the average metaphysical person can really discern all of that. Because, usually when you find stones, you find them where you find them. But, one thing is to rely more heavily on found stones, or on stones whose actual origin you know. And also, one of the things I talk about at some length in the book are synthetically created stones. And Not every stone that you would want for metaphysical use is being synthetically created. But some of the things like gemstones, for example, like emerald or sapphire or what have you, are also being created in laboratories where they're not being mined from anywhere. Um, you may have seen over the years in chemistry classes or chemistry projects, grow your own crystal. Maybe you've even done that. Um, and this is one way to obtain stones that are not coming directly from the earth. And of course, there are a lot of questions about whether these are equally useful in metaphysical work. And we talk about that for a whole chapter in the book. Um, in my opinion, artificially created stones are very useful in metaphysical work, but they're different from a mined stone. And you want to bear that difference in mind in using them. The main aspect of the difference is that a lab created stone is going to be much younger and therefore much more archetypal in terms of its qualities and energies versus a mined stone, which is going to be much older and influenced by many more experiences. And hello to Reverend Mary Hawk in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. And Magical Mermaid says, I love how I saw one healer who put gems in a spray mist bottle with distilled water and used it to cleanse and enhance someone's aura. Yes, indeed. And we have a section on that in the book, too, if you're interested in creating gem elixirs and waters and using them in that way and other similar ways. We have a section describing how to do that, when to do that, and when not to do that. And hello to Bimby in the chat room. Using gems in waters can be very helpful. You want to be very careful sometimes of what kind of stone you use in creating a water because they're not all water safe. A number of stones are too soft for a long-term immersion in water. And the way that you would make a water or an elixir from a stone like that is to use an indirect method where you put it into a second smaller container and put it into the water to be charged so that it is receiving the vibration of the stone but not coming in contact with it, because a stone like, for example, selenite will not hold up to that kind of immersion in water because it's simply not that hard. But you can still charge water with the selenite through this indirect method. The other thing you have to be careful with, if you're going to drink the elixir, you want to make sure that it's a stone that's safe for consumption. They aren't all. And we talk about that in the book at some length. But if you're thinking of making elixirs out of stones and crystals, where you put the stone or crystal into the water to charge it and then consume it, make sure that you research that stone or crystal before you do it to make certain that there is nothing harmful with it. Because, certain stones do have certain chemicals that can leach out into that water and not be good for you. We talk about some of them, but it's not an exhaustive list. And generally speaking, I don't usually create that sort of elixir. I'm much more likely to use a gem elixir in a topical way as an anointing water, or a floor wash, or a spray, as Magical Mermaid has mentioned. Those are all, in my opinion, very, very good ways to use a stone water. If you're going to consume it, make sure you know what you're doing. As I say, I talk about it a bit in the book. But, it never hurts to be careful. And certain stones are known for possessing things like lithium. The one I'm thinking of has lithium in it. So make sure that it's not one like that, because you don't want to be taking an oral dose of lithium through an elixir. That's not a good idea. On the other hand, if you are using it as a floor wash, that isn't necessarily going to be a problem. But not every stone is necessarily safe for that kind of purpose. And this is one of the things we talk about in the book. And we talk about how to cleanse stones, and you can use running water for that purpose. You can use moonlight for that purpose. You can use sound for that purpose. You can use visualization for that purpose. But if you're going to use, for example, running water, you need to make sure that your stone is safe for water, because some of them will be slowly eroded by being exposed to water. And these are things that people don't always think about. We also talked quite a bit about different ways to carry or wear stones, for different ways of interacting with their energy, how to use them for talismans and amulets. And one of the things I talk about, which I think I mentioned the other day, we talk about how, and of course they're not strictly speaking stones by any means, but how coins have been used historically as talismans. And even though, as I say, not a stone, but I do segue at one point into talking about how you can use coins as talismans. And how, in the ancient Greek world, for example, certain stones, or certain coins rather, that had the owl of Athena on their surface were kept as talismans to invoke the patronage of that goddess and the qualities of wisdom and strength and courage that she represented. And in the modern world, you find the penny and pick it up, and all the day you have good luck, which is a superstition that I do believe in and follow. If I see a penny, I'm almost certainly going to pick it up if I can. And I find that it usually does presage good luck in whatever I'm walking into. If you find a dime, it represents the influence of your ancestors being strong around you at that time. I don't think it's handy, but let's just look and see. One of my tie clips is a dime. It is an old Mercury head dime, and of course it's not sufficiently handy to hold up for you, but it's an old Mercury head dime, which has the negative space cut out, and it's been mounted as a tie tack. And I quite enjoy wearing that. And hello to Swag Fan in the chat room. It's good to see you. And Nicholas says, what is the difference between a potion and an elixir? I think it's largely semantic. A potion is anything that can be drank, something that is potable. So a potion in particular is meant to be consumed. My favorite potion is coffee. I use it every day. And in a manner of speaking, it comes under that heading. An elixir is a slightly more precise term, but generally speaking, they're used interchangeably. And when you go through the modern metaphysical world, you don't find a lot of use of either of these things today, because a lot of times people don't recognize as being, quote, potions, the kind of potions we actually do use. That's why I refer to my coffee. I regard the coffee as being a magical potion. There are all kinds of herbal teas that constitute magical potions in the traditional sense. If you're taking chamomile tea to calm your nerves or help you to sleep, this is in its way a magical potion. You're taking it for a reason. I take the coffee for energy. And Reverend Mary says, coffee is a potion. Laugh out loud. Yes, absolutely. When you think about potions in this way, they're actually still a very common part of our metaphysical practice. We just don't necessarily think of them in quite that way. And Swackfan says, my favorite potion is bourbon. Well, it could be thought of that way. When we think of a magic potion, per se, then we're taking that potable substance and we're charging it magically. which you often could do with uh, an herbal tea, for example, or what have you. Magical Mermaid says, would you consider fine metals similar to gems? Yes, and we talk about those in the book as well. And the reason that I've put them together is that the different metals that you'd be likely to encounter all do have their metaphysical properties too, but there really aren't enough of them to be their own book, so they often get put in with stones and crystals. But yes, metals have a long history of metaphysical meaning and metaphysical use, and we talk about that in the book. I've talked about it in other places also. And in particular, they have certain planetary connections which tend to indicate what you would use them for. So, for example, gold. Um, Gold you would use in connection with the sun, and it's good for anything that involves success, physical action, physical manifestation, and anything that is solar in character, anything that is active in character, anything that is, shall we say, yin, or I beg your pardon, yang energy, outward going, um, that sort of energy, you would look to gold. On the other hand, silver is associated with the moon, and it's very good for anything involving emotion, intuition, psychic ability, magic, etc. This is one reason why very often you'll find silver more popular in the metaphysical community, because its qualities are far more metaphysical. It is connected with yin energy, with the divine feminine, with magic and psychism and so forth. Copper, which I don't have a piece immediately handy to hold up, is associated with the planet Venus. And it is very good for anything involving um, emotion and uh, direction of passion, direction of energy. Um, when I was learning metaphysics, copper was extremely common in terms of being used. Um, Pardon me for just a moment. Okay. Um, but when I was young, copper was commonly used in our magical tools to help to direct the energy. Um, but its planetary association is with Venus. Iron is associated with Saturn, for example. I beg your pardon, with Mars, for example. But you go through all of these different planetary associations. They all have their meanings, the things that they would be better used for. And we talk about that in the book. I'm not going to go through them all. Hello to Steve Taylor in the chat room. It's good to see you. But yes, you approach them in very much the same manner that you approach gems. Some are better for some purposes than others. And um, yeah, there you go. So we I was just contacted by Krys, who reminds me that actually we've decided to go to once a month. I had forgotten that this morning. So uh, future Wednesdays, once a month, we'll be talking about Corellian publication. Otherwise, we'll be talking about other things. Um, but today, I thought it was appropriate to talk about the book, the fact that it will be in your hands soon. When we talk about metals, let's see. Tin is associated with the planet Jupiter. We don't see a lot of tin anymore, but it has that association. Iron and Mars, and lead with Saturn. Um, and of course, Mercury with Mercury. And of course, you don't want to actually be doing anything with Mercury. It's rather dangerous. Um, and generally speaking, we don't want to do a lot with lead either for the same reason. Although I think sometimes people get a little more a little more nervous about lead than is absolutely necessary. But still, it's better not to take any chances. Um, and so we tend to to substitute other metals for those today. And Mary in the chat room says, "Yay, I can't wait to get it. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it." Um, Now, the next book is the next thing. And there are two books we're looking at. Reverend Don's Book of Energy, which is almost certainly going to be the next book. And that's going to be talking about the use of energy, probably a lot about chakras and meridians and energetic healing, as well as manifestation. I think this is probably going to be the next book. And then we're also looking at the long discussed autobiography. And I'm not going to suggest that's going to be the next book because I expect that's going to take quite a while. I find the idea of writing the autobiography a little daunting, partly because, I know it's not true, but writing an autobiography seems kind of final to me. But I can think of a number of celebrities who wrote several during the course of their lifetime, so I guess it really isn't. So I guess it will be my autobiography up until now. But the other thing is I've had so many adventures that trying to fit them all in one book is going to be a thing. And I think it's very important to actually write it, to tell some of the stories, because there are lots of people who tell stories about me and about us that aren't true. So telling the true stories probably is a good idea. Or as Edward likes to say, there's fan fiction about us out there. And Bimby says Isaac Asimov wrote 3. Yes, exactly. And I believe Betty Davis wrote a number of them. And one of my favorite autobiographies is called My Several Worlds, which was written by Pearl S. Buck. But it was written well before the end of her life. I don't know if it's the only one she wrote, but I definitely remember reading it. So yeah, I need to get over the idea that it's a final statement on one's life and take it rather as a statement on where I'm at now. There's so many people that I have known who are now among the ancestors who probably will only really be remembered outside of their immediate circle of friends if somebody writes about them, so I probably should write about them. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting task, but I would not look for that one to be just a couple of months away. It's going to take a little while to put it all together. Now, I see that we are at 23 past the hour. I want to go ahead and take a moment for a word from our sponsors. Ready to unlock the secrets of the universe? Join me, Rev Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours. And thank you to our sponsors, Equinox Learning Hub and Rev Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions. The next Metaphysical and Magic Auction will be February 28th. That's a Friday night at 7 p.m. Central. I hope you'll join us for that. And it's going to be specifically metaphysical things being offered. And we'll be talking more about that in the future and featuring some of those items as we get closer. And Magical Mermaid says, magical people, places, and things. Well, yes, actually. I think from my point of view, the hardest part will be deciding what to include and what not to include in the autobiography. For example, I often tell the story about the incident when I was quite young, where an early pagan spirit gathering was disrupted by armed protesters at the gate, and all of the festival goers went and hid in the woods and left Lady Selena and a handful of other elders to go and handle the situation. And what a deep effect this had on me, even though I wasn't physically there. Um, but yeah, I read about it in Circle Network News, to which Lady Crystal and I were subscribed from Volume 1, Issue 2. And at one time, I still had those. I don't know if I've still got them now. But, um, but yeah, I don't know. I suspect I should include things like that, but I also don't want to overburden it. I feel I should talk about the Lawrence Museum and my adventures there. Um, so there are so many interesting things, but I also don't want to lose the main focus of the story, um, which is one of moving forward. So it'll be an interesting look at the metaphysical world of the late 20th and early 21st centuries. And I suspect at one point I may talk about the Corellian calendar and why we created the Corellian calendar. And I suspect that younger people in the community would not recognize the reason at all. And that is that back in the late 20th century, creating different forms of calendars was extremely big in the metaphysical world because people wanted to get away from the Gregorian calendar. They wanted something more in tune with paganism. So we created the Corellian calendar to do that, but still be useful for practical everyday activities. Today, no one seems to care about different calendars at all. It shows how much things change. In talking today about Reverend Don's Reverend Don's book of stones, metals, and crystals, I feel like I should probably talk about Marlena the Rock Lady and the years I spent working at J&M fairs. And there's several really interesting anecdotes about Marlena the Rock Lady, um, including how she and her husband Jim dealt with opposition when they encountered it. There was a time they were told that psychic readings were illegal in the area they were having a particular fair. They dealt with this by not offering psychic readings. Instead, they sold people stones at a higher price that included a free psychic reading, which did not violate the law. Very intelligent. Um, Want to write about Terry Milton, the Stone Lady, another person who specialized particularly in stones. And what a delightful person she is. So many interesting people I've known. I can't possibly include them all, which is one of the things that kind of slows me down with the idea of writing an autobiography because I want to include everything, but you really can't. Um, so going through my life and deciding what is worth including is probably going to be the hardest part. But that is on the list, even if it's not the immediate next book. And I hope people continue to find our books interesting. And April says, I'd love to have a nickname like Marlena the Rock Lady. And yeah, it was very, very, I believe she got it. Well, she got it because she was a rock reader. You would go to her for a psychic reading. You would select um, a stone to be read or a group of stones to be read. It's been a long time now. And she would read you from the stones that you were attracted to. And Carrie Milton, the Stone Lady, does a similar style of reading where you choose, I believe, 7 stones, and she reads you by what the stones are and the order in which you've chosen them. And it's a fascinating discipline. Um, The other thing that I find fascinating in seeing different people who work with stones is how differently they do it sometimes. And it just goes to remind you that there's so many different ways to approach metaphysics. And those people who tell you there's just one way or just one system are missing so much. And I'm pleased to say that as I've gone through life, um, I've set my foot in many rooms and seen many interesting things, and hopefully we'll talk about those a little bit. So, anyway, with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again tomorrow. And until next time, let us close with our prayer. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to continue to be with us and guide us as we go forward. We rejoice in the beauty that life offers us, and we also rejoice in learning the lessons that life offers us, if not always in the moment of learning them, but in the progress that it brings us. And we ask you, therefore, to help us to learn the lessons life offers us and to always move forward, even when at times it may seem the world is moving backwards. Help us to always find the best way to progress. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love. And knowing you're always with us, we thank you for your presence, and may you be blessed now and always. May you be blessed now and always, and I will see you again tomorrow.